What is up, Ravens flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. James and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm James Haskell, along with my co-host, Glenn Martin, and a familiar face and friend of the show, Brad Ward. Brad, of course, wears a ton of hats, but you might know him as the host and producer of All Eyes on Cleveland, or as a writer at USA's Today, the Browns Wire. Make sure to go check him out on all of those things to keep yourself up to date when it comes to the Browns. But Brad, we use you as our source of truth when it comes to the one and only Cleveland Browns, and we're here to talk about it. How you doing?
Oh boy, that's quite an introduction there. Thank you. That's probably too good for me. The source of truth. Wow.
That's right. Source of truth and reason. How about that?
Sure. I'll try.
No
I'll try to live up to that. That's a lot of pressure.
Well, the place I want to start with, when they played last time, when the Browns and Ravens faced off last time, it was pretty clear to me, and you mentioned it going into the week, that they were missing that deep threat to back the Ravens defense off, and it was quite evident. So going into this week, what are the chances of getting some speed back out there at the wide receiver position with Anthony Schwartz and Donovan Peoples-Jones?
Well, it's tough. Peoples-Jones, he played in that game.
I think he played, but he was very limited.
He was very limited. And the really weird one for that Ravens game is Higgins was a healthy scratch. So Rashard Higgins has been a big part of this wide receiving group for a couple years now. One of Baker Mayfield's favorite targets. Now, he's had this has been a pattern that we've seen over the years, going back to Freddie Kitchens. He was in the doghouse early on when he became head coach. And really didn't play much that year after having a really productive season the year before. Stefanski came in. He didn't dress the first few games, but at the end of last year, he came on and in the last 7 games had 500 some yards. He was averaging 17 yards whatever that, down. He was in the top 3 in down the field catching, and he was very productive. And then this year, same thing. He's back down further on the depth chart and then did something, obviously, because they're very short on wide receivers, and he's a healthy scratch. They actually played Jamarcus Bradley, a practice squad player, over him. So very weird. Don't really know what happened there. I've heard some rumors, but nothing substantiated, you know what I mean, that I can really say on the record, yeah, this is what happened, but we'll see. I would like to see him on the field. I'm a big fan of his. He kind of has a knack for getting open, but not really your deep threat. Schwartz, I don't think, is going to be ready. He's still in concussion protocol today, so it doesn't sound like he'll be ready to play. Plus, the Browns lose Njoku for COVID-19. It does not look like he will be ready. I mean, it would be crazy if he was going to get 2 negative tests by then. So really, I don't expect them to have anything more as a deep threat goes. I have been pounding the table saying at least get Higgins out there because he can get more separation than a Jamarcus Bradley can. And he kind of has a knack to get open a little bit. No, Marlon Humphrey certainly helps the situation, right? I know, right? I mean, I said this on a show I was on Monday where we cover the whole NFL, every game of the week, and I was like, I don't think any team asks a corner to do more than the Ravens asked Marlon Humphrey to do, and he's just an amazing player, and that's just so detrimental. I can't even imagine the Ravens, injured reserve list at this point. It's insane.
Yeah,
I think four of the top five. Yeah. 4 of the top 5 moneymakers on the team are now on IR.
Yeah, and actually, I was going to ask about Njoku because I wasn't 100% sure if there was still a chance that he would play, but based on it sounds like the chances of that are pretty low at this point. Then, because after he's basically your largest vertical threat, right?
Best, yeah, has the most yards receiving this year, I think, on the team so far, which is crazy, right? And you're 6-6 somehow with that, but yeah, Stefanski said he was hopeful to get him back, but, I mean, if we're being realistic, I mean, he's got, 3 days to turn around 2 negative tests? Yeah. He says he doesn't feel anything. He's been tweeting nonstop about, I don't feel anything. Well, it doesn't really matter, buddy, if you feel anything. You might be asymptomatic, and that's just going to be it for this week. But So, yeah, I doubt we see Schwartz. I doubt we see Njoku. So they'll be shorthanded again out there. I would hope to see Higgins back. And really, guys, I would like to see, if you remember in the first game, they brought in Felton, our rookie from UCLA, who's very quick and kind of has some of that separation ability. And they brought him in for one play, 4th down and short. He drops it on a 4th down. If you remember, they went for it at about the 50. He dropped the 4th down, or maybe it was 3rd down. Either way, they had to give up the ball. He was only in for that play. Like, I mean, you're not putting a guy in a position to succeed when you put him in a situation like that. And he drops it, right? Like, let him get in the rhythm of the game. And he's a guy that I like a lot in the slot who can separate a little bit. Very good quicks, but still lacking that vertical threat. The only way they're going to get that back is if Peoples-Jones is healthy, which I would assume he would be after a bye week. So.
Now you talked a little bit about health, but are there some other names of players that have been going through ailing injuries that are come back? Like, what's the injury report look like so far, based on what you've been able to hear? Of course, Baker's an ongoing story with his myriad of injuries, but what do you guys got going on as far as injuries go coming into this game?
So this is as healthy as they should have been in a long time, right? With
Conklin is out, right? I mean,
Conklin is out. Yeah. He's done for the year, so he's out.
Terrible, man. I felt terrible for him.
He comes back after the elbow, and then he's out for the year. So, but other than that, they should be healthier than they've been, right? So you've got Njoku, Schwartz are still out, but they are getting a linebacker back in Jacob Phillips from LSU, very quick kid. He can help if he's ready to play. I don't know how, JOK played so well in the last game. Mm-hmm. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was kind of a star in that game.
Yeah.
He's amazing. So I don't really know where Phillips fits in if he's playing most of those downs, because I don't really see the Browns being in a whole lot of base against the Ravens. They're going to want more smaller guys on the field. So he may not find a place in this game, but we'll see. He has a lot of speed, and he has a lot of upside. The Browns like him a lot. They lost him in training camp, so he's been out for all season. So, They didn't put him on IR. I would bring him back now. I don't know if he would be ready to step in this game. Baker supposedly feels better, but who knows what that means, because once again, the shoulder's not getting better till he has surgery. So, period. That is not getting any better. So you can say he feels better all he wants. Maybe the heel, the groin, some of those ailments are much better, and maybe he'll play better. But he was terrible, again, against the Ravens, in my opinion, not playing up to his... He was better than he was the week before, but he was still bad. And not enough. I mean, really, in my opinion, in that game, and I know I'm getting off topic here, but the Ravens just did exactly what every team should do to the Browns and dare Baker Mayfield to beat you, and he wasn't able to do it. That's the formula to beat the Browns right now.
Yeah, and how surprised were you that the Ravens were able to limit that run attack to 17 carries for just 40 yards?
You know what? I was rather disappointed that the Browns didn't stay with it more. I felt like, they stopped him, and they stopped him for losses, but the 5-man front, more than anything, because they stopped him early, I felt like it was a deterrent to running, not so much stopping them from running. And that's what you got to do. I mean, it worked, right? He got out of sync with the run game. I would have liked to seen them use Kareem Hunt more, who was successful in the first half. They didn't go back to him. I guess he was having some sort of a health issue, and that's the reason why he didn't come back in, because as soon as he came into the game, he ran for a first down on 2 runs, right? And they went right back to Chubb, who seemed to be having a tough time finding any room to go. And everything was to the left after Conklin went out. Mm-hmm. So that I didn't like either, right? So hopefully... the Browns are very multiple in their run game. It's not just the zone run. They do have the gap scheme. They have a lot of pin and pull stuff that they'll use. But they really didn't get to any of that in the first game. I felt like they were deterred early and then never really got back to it consistently enough to really give it a good effort. We use that example of the Bills and the New England Patriots, right? Like last night. Like, they knew they were running and they couldn't stop it. Like, you've got to kind of take that approach sometimes, because until you run successfully, there is no pass game, right? The only time the Browns had success in the pass game was off the play action after they got maybe 2 yards in the run game. So it's so dependent on at least having the threat there of running. And I felt like the Ravens putting 5 guys up front, that bare front, deterred Stefanski from going to it more often. And I feel like he needs to stick with it more, especially early in the second half, I thought.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. One of the things I wanted to ask you this question, because if you compare it to the Ravens, the last time we played the Browns feels like it's been a year ago because of everything that just happened. We went through Steelers week. It was an emotional game. Obviously it's a really tough loss. We lost Marlon Humphrey. All those things happened. But what's the narrative been from the fans' point of view from the Browns? Because I've heard some folks after that loss, they were just like super down on the Browns, feel like they're in the dumps and everything else. But others that feel like they still have a chance. But like, what's the pulse in the city around the Browns at this point? Because this is just me. If I'm a Browns fan, I'm looking at Cincinnati, who for some reason Baker Mayfield always finds a way to light them up. And I'm looking at the Ravens, who are about as beat up as any team ever in the NFL. And I'm thinking, hey, look, we're 6-6, but the back end of the season, December football is when money is made. Yeah. We still got a shot here. So what's the pulse there inside the city right now going into this game?
Let me turn this. Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, you're good.
Phone's making noise in the background there.
I'm sure it's Baker. Just
yeah. He's like, hey, come on, man, be easy on me. I think that most people are trying to be realistic about it, right? Because I think they're at like a 24% chance to make the playoffs at this point. Now, I'm doing a show tomorrow night. I actually found a site it's pretty cool. It's on New York Times, and it takes every team, right? And it takes all their games, and then it takes all of the schedule of the whole NFL each week below it. And you can click on which game and like pick which team wins, and it'll light up which games will affect their percentage to make the playoffs. So you can literally see exactly how you can get in the playoffs and what teams need to win and lose for the next few weeks. So it's pretty cool. I'm going to do a show with that on, and we have a guest coming on from the Beacon Journal. He covers the Browns beat. So it should be a good show, but I want to do that in front of everybody and kind of show like what has to happen, because there is a path to get there, right? Mm-hmm. This one, I mean, everybody's saying like, okay, they don't really have a chance, but really, how much would the narrative change if they could just get this one game? They would be one game out potentially, right? Mm-hmm. So it really, I think they have to win. Realistically, they have to win 4 out of 5, right? Or is that right? 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5, 4 out of 5. Yeah, 4 out of 5 to get to 17 screws me up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, all of us. Trust me.
They have to get 4 out of 5. I think they could lose to Green Bay and be okay. They play Green Bay on Christmas Day. That's going to be a tough one, obviously, in Green Bay. But that's an NFC game. So if they won out, I think they would be 7-6 in the AFC. For your tiebreakers, they would have one over the Raiders. They would have over the Bengals, right? And then, they would be, tied with a bunch of teams they're probably at. That would get them to 10 wins. That's your best shot to get in. Do I think that's realistic? Yeah, they could get hot. I mean, they could get hot after this. They did it last year. They got hot down the stretch. But and then some of the teams they play, like, you would like to think, a lot of people are really down, but you watch the Ravens play last week and you're like, dang, man, how did we not win the game the week before? Lamar throws 4 picks and you don't get a win.
Crazy.
That's brutal, right? That's so brutal. Like, your defense played so well. Like, you just needed a little bit from your offense and you couldn't get it. It was really disheartening, I think that game was for a lot of Browns fans. So a lot of people are really, really down. But there's some of us that, like myself, who I think they have a shot still. I'm not giving up on them. You know what, guys? I spent too many years where they were out of it at this point in the season to have them even have a percentage chance and me give up on them at this point, right?
I know that's right. Yeah, you've certainly been in much worse position than right now. But going back to last game, to me, it came down to one area. I mean, because you said it, you picked the Ravens off 4 times, but yet you have 8 less first downs. You have 15 minutes less in time of possession. It doesn't make sense, but to me, where it comes down to was the 3rd and 4th down conversions. I mean, the Browns were 4 of 14 in those 2 areas combined, and the Ravens were 8 of 16. And that's not an area where the Ravens have necessarily been good all year. They just had a good game against Cleveland. So how do they switch, flip that around and convert more of these 3rd downs? Does it just come down to, can Baker hit the guy, or what has to go into helping improve those numbers?
Yeah, Glenn, you're that is the story of the Browns season, this third down. So like the defense has been brutal at getting off the field on third downs, and the offense has been horrible at converting third downs, and that's just kind of been the story of the season all season long. And all of their losses, the numbers look like that Ravens game. You know what I mean? The opponent versus what the Browns do on third down. To me, Baker has to play well, has to play better. I'm just, when they stop the run and make him throw, or even when he gets into, a position like he was in that game where twice late in the game he had a chance to go down and take the lead, right? Like, he has to convert. Like, if you're a franchise quarterback, that is the time you have to convert. I'm not saying this, but this isn't the 2002 Ravens defense. Come on, man. This secondary has been giving up tons of yards. You've got to be able to complete some passes and move the ball down the field, and he just hasn't been able to do it this year.
Yeah. What do you think that something I've always thought is interesting? Styles make fights, and you guys have probably the best pass rushing duo in the NFL. Certainly, when it comes to paper, like Myles Garrett is obviously a monster, not just on paper, and Clowney's one heck of a football player, obviously a former number one overall pick. But one of the things that's interesting is I feel like parts of their game are always mitigated by the way that they rush and the way that Lamar Jackson can run the football. But will the Ravens fans, or will we, all of us watching, see any differences in this game in the way that they try and get after Lamar based on how frustrated they obviously were? I mean, we saw Clowney throw the helmet. We saw Myles Garrett walk past the camera and said he's bleeping fast. Like, we saw all that.
He shook his hand after that.
Yeah,
Dude, those throws were ridiculous to Mark Andrews. I was so pissed. I'm sorry. I was throwing stuff around my living room. Like, the fadeaway throws, right? Like, with guys tackling them, are so absurd. Like, the touchdown where he just threw it in the middle of the end zone and Andrews comes out of nowhere and catches it. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Yeah. But I think that you're right. He neutralizes a lot of their speed rush stuff, right? Because he can't really get upfield the same way because he'll just take off. I think we talked about that last time a little bit too. Yeah. That he's done that in the past to them. Clowney played a hell of a game. He's played really well for the Browns. He's missed one game, I think, due to injury. The rap on him coming in was he's always hurt. He doesn't get sacks. He's gotten sacks. He's pressured quarterback often. He's more than anything, he's a disruptor, right? Like, he just disrupts things. He could not get to the Lamar in that game, but he was in his face all game, right? He was there all game. He was chasing him all game. I thought he played really well despite being frustrated. Myles was there. I think he got to him once or twice, but was in the backfield all game. I think that maybe you might see a little bit different usage of. I don't think they knew that Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was as ready and healthy as he was, because he was like shot out of a cannon in that game. And up to that point, I think we talked about how limited his snaps had been coming into that game, and I wasn't sure how much they were going to use him. Well, they used him at pretty much every play. So I think knowing that coming into this game may change Joe Wood's approach, maybe a little more spying with him or some delayed blitzes with him, I think would make sense. Mm-hmm. Because he's a guy, I think, that with Lamar in open space, he makes those tackles more often than other guys.
Certainly a hell of an athlete. And, as good as Myles Garrett is, and there's no debate on how good he is, I tell you what, I like him a heck of a lot more than TJ Watt. And maybe that's because the sportsmanship with him talking about, dapping up Lamar and defending that in his post-game presser. Yeah. But, man, that damn TJ Watt. We were supposed to, first of all, I'm not buying into Njoku not missing this game for COVID, because we heard the same damn thing about TJ Watt, and that son of a gun showed up and brought his A game.
Yeah.
But Myles, is that criticism real? Like, do people really criticize him for showing good sportsmanship and kind of tipping his hat when a play is made on him?
I think Myles is different. Ever since he came in the league, he's different. Like, he's not like your every guy. Like, he has other interests besides football, right? Like, football isn't life for Myles Garrett. And I know that's how it is for most NFL players, right? Like, he's very, like, he likes poetry, and he's just kind of different guy,
into
right?
Dinosaurs and stuff
very much into dinosaurs, and he's very well educated and well spoken, and he's just a intellectual guy, right? And he cares more about the other aspects of life than just the NFL and football. Although it's a big part of his life, you just don't see that from every NFL player. A lot of guys are just, one track. This is my life, and so I think you see that sportsmanship side from him, and he has relationships with guys all over the league, and he does a lot of stuff like. He's in charge of that. He did the Water Boys thing where he went overseas and provided all the water and stuff. And all of this after the really bad look that he got in the game with the helmet with Mason Rudolph, right? Which I hated because that's not Myles Garrett at all, right? Like, that's not who he is at all. So I really hated that situation because it was just like a one moment, right? Like 1 second bad reaction. Bad moment, and Mason Rudolph is kind of a punk ass anyway. So, that's what happens,
Yeah,
so.
Certainly outside of his character. That crazy moment, no doubt about that. But all right, so you watched that game. You watched the Steelers. You watched the Ravens lose to the Steelers going down the stretch, and you mentioned it before the show. So we'll certainly get your take on what were your thoughts on how that game ended.
Well, I was surprised that Roethlisberger and Deontay Johnson was able to get off the way he was in the fourth quarter after being so bad and shut down pretty much all game, right? They get back, they take the lead, but here's my thing, right? Like, so you guys remember the bowl game with Boise State and Oklahoma when Boise State scored on the hook and ladder and then went for two, and the guy did the behind-the-back Statue of Liberty play, right, to score. That makes sense to me to go for two there, right, instead of overtime because you're Boise State and that's Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And you have a better chance of winning on one play than you do on an extended length of football, right, or a longer amount of football. To me, the Ravens are a better team than the Steelers, hands down. So go to overtime and be the better team and beat them. To me, you go for the win and the go for 2-point conversion. I know analytics says to do it, right? Like, I get it. But, like, I think a lot of that analytics stuff you have to have a feel for, right? And I know John Harbaugh is a spectacular coach. I think he's fantastic. So I'm not like totally second guessing him. I get what he was doing, right? Being aggressive. But I think if you're the better football team, you want to play more football. And that's just kind of my concept on it.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thought was they just lost Marlon. The Steelers had
that stuff about the secondary, yeah.
Yeah, the Steelers had more yards in the fourth quarter than they had in the previous three quarters combined, and the Ravens really weren't moving the ball except for in that very last drive where they were able to move it. So I just feel like they probably thought, look, we're going to give the ball to Lamar Jackson from 2 yards out and roll the dice there because I don't think they had much confidence in overtime.
But they didn't, though. They threw it. And that's even the next question is, like, if you're going to do that, don't you run it with Lamar or maybe not? I don't know. I will say that the play looked like it was going to be successful. It's not like the Steelers stopped it. They just kind of was just a half second off, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm with you, Brad. I wanted us to kick the field goal, take an emotional lap, like recollect ourselves and say, like, look, there's one thing people, and trust me, Glenn knows this, whether it's, and you've seen it, whether it's on ESPN or all the way down to the most diehard Ravens fan, Greg Roman has been raked across the coals this week.
Yeah.
It's incredible the amount of hate that one man can get while being relatively successful at his job. But
it's absurd, yeah.
But this is what I'll say is that if Greg Roman, if they get the ball, that's what it really comes down to. One, the concern about stopping him, like Glenn mentioned, like that's a valid concern. But if the Ravens get the ball, if you got one drive and you got Greg Roman puts together, and Glenn's seen this before, like the second half coming out of that Tennessee Titans game in the playoffs, when we threw it like 3 times to Patrick Ricard. There's a couple of instances where Greg Roman puts together, when he knows he's got one drive and the money's on the line, like, gosh dang it, he's talked about that vault. And that vault, I swear, he breaks out the vault on every single play, and then we end up down the field. So, like, that's why I was like, all right, let's take an emotional lap. We got here by the skin of our teeth. Let's pause, recollect ourselves, and then beat him in overtime. But I get both sides of it. Like, at the end of the day, if he just caught it,
the throw was on the money. And honestly, do you guys, since Lamar's been here, have we ever not gone for it in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely...
I don't know. Is that the case?
Yeah, I mean, you just don't go conservative ever since Lamar's been here. It's always been the aggressive move, and so.
But I really wanted to see him move. Like I told Glenn this before, I wanted to see him,
or something.
Let him roll out and give an opportunity for his guys to create, or let him take off. Like give him a chance to use both options. But the other thing I got to ask really quickly, is around we talked about the fans' pulse, but what do you think are, and we also, this is such a weird thing once again, and so interesting because they haven't played anyone. Like they played the Ravens last, and of course they gotta play us again. So what will be, if any at all, noticeable differences in the game plan? Because you're 3/4 the way through the season. Like how much can you change as a team? Right. The only teams I think that have successfully done that are the Patriots when Brady and them were in their prime, right? They're one team this week and one team another week. But how do you successfully, change or make major modifications to your game plan in order to beat a team that you just lost to? Like, will we see anything substantially different or just better execution? Is that the plan?
Yeah, I don't know if you'll see anything substantially different. Maybe on defense, I think you might see. Here's the thing. Like, one thing that I wish that they would have done more of, and I think maybe they will, is we saw and I mentioned this last time, I watched the Dolphins breakdown on the blitzing Lamar, and the Steelers had a ton of success blitzing Lamar. Like, I get the Browns were getting home with 4, but I would like to see them bring additional people and blitz him more often. I feel like the Ravens are having a little bit of a problem identifying the solution to a loaded up blitz, right? Like, They did at the end of the Miami game, but they really struggled. Lamar really struggled in the Pittsburgh game when Pittsburgh brought extra people, and he just is not right now, not always, because I've seen him do it before, but right now he's not like finding the solution immediately, right? It's taking him a click or two to find the hot, or he's hesitating when there's a hot open or whatever it is. And it's working for teams. It worked for the Steelers. I would like to see the Browns do that more. I thought they should have done it more in the other game because they had some success with it in that game. Because they had the pressure on him all the time, but he was beating the 4-man pressure with his scramble, right, in the fadeaway throws and just bring somebody else, somebody faster, bring one extra guy. I can't really complain about the defense. They picked him off 4 times, 3 times in the first half. The problem is they didn't, they pick him off 3 times in the first half and you come away with 3 points, and that's the game right there, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have to score that. And even Myles Garrett was saying that in the press conference afterwards. He was like, we turned him over 3 times, we came away with 3 points in the first half. That's absurd. That just can't happen.
Really quickly, and I got to ask you one more question. This is something I think about as a Ravens fan. Are you more concerned as a Browns fan now that the Ravens just came off of a loss and they're going to be playing now for their proverbial lives? At least it'll feel like it, like with much more desperation, even though they're still technically first in the AFC North. Instead, like, would you prefer to play them coming off of a win with a little more leeway instead of a tough loss like that? Does that ever come into your mind?
You would, yeah, of course you would, because they bounce back from games well. That's just good coaching, right? They always play well and play mad and angry in games like this. But at the same time, I can't have it both ways. I had to have them lose as a Browns fan against the Steelers, right? And we needed them. Browns needed them to lose against the Steelers to help their situation. So I'd rather have that happen and play them after a loss than have them won and separate the lead by 3 games, right? Yeah. So I think it's more important that happened. I think it gives the Browns a little more hope because you're just 1 game away if you win, right? It really changes the narrative on the division. And I was going to say, as a guy rooting for the Steelers in that game, as hard as that is for me to do, in that game, I was going to say, with the 2-point conversion, as a guy rooting for the Steelers, I was happy when they went for it, to give you an idea, on the 2-point conversion. I was like, great, they're going for it. This is the only chance the Steelers have to win the game is if they miss this, right? Because if they go to overtime, I thought the Ravens were going to win for sure. So that's...
Wow. Okay. All right, and then last one I have for you, Brad, is just about the offense game plan. Do you think the Browns will see this depleted secondary and go, wow, we gotta attack this group? Or do you think they'll stick with what they do best and run the ball first and play action off that?
Yeah, and I kind of didn't really answer your question all the way, James, on the first one, but as far as the bye week thing, I don't expect them to change a ton. On offense, they're going to be forced to change some things, right? So the Browns and they did it successfully at the beginning of the game, and Harrison Bryant got hurt, one of their tight ends. They run a lot of 13 personnel, right? So with Bryant out and Njoku on the COVID list, they signed 2 guys, brought a guy up from the practice squad, but I only think one of them will be active. So they won't even be able to run what they run 20% of the time, which is, I think they run like 21% of the time. They're in 13 personnel. They won't even have 3 tight ends on the roster. So they'll at least be in 12 or more 11. I think they could counteract that with maybe some 21 or 22 where they put 2 backs on the field at the same time. They've been really, they've not wanted to do that, put Chubb and Hunt on the field at the same time really at all. But I think that may be the only way they can kind of counteract, try to get mismatches in this, with your linebackers or whatever, without the 3 tight ends that are really good pass catchers, especially if Njoku's out. Forenstall is a guy they're calling up from the practice squad. He played at Alabama, but he's a undrafted rookie. So we'll see. I mean, I think he's the next guy to play. Yeah, I mean, he's been with the team since like week 2, so he knows what's going on. But I think probably you're going to be forced into playing a lot of 11 personnel or 21 or whatever, because they just aren't going to have the tight ends they've had. And they depend so much on that, not only in the pass game, but the run game. So I think you're going to see some different looks. I think this is a kitchen sink game totally for the Browns. I think they empty everything out of the bag. I think that if they probably tried to identify some things on tape that they could maybe take advantage of. They've had 2 weeks to watch every square inch of that tape against the Ravens last time, right? And when does that happen? That you can immediately make adjustments, right? And I think that, the biggest thing for me about bye weeks is self-scouting yourself, right? It's the opportunity to look inward, as the Browns, talked about, and Stefanski talked about at length, and say, what tendencies do the Ravens see, right? What tendencies are they going off of? And that chance to self-scout yourself, I think, really, as a play caller, is huge, right? Because now you can play off of your tendencies and what the defense has seen on tape for weeks, and I think that gives the team an advantage a little bit.
Yeah, it's really going to be interesting. So, and that's something, I don't know if you did, Glenn, that's something I didn't initially think about, is their ability to run out of that formation based on the fact that, not only is Njoku their, one of their hottest targets and most used targets, but certainly this changes their offensive game plan and limits it in scope. But Brad, give us your prediction on the game if you have one so far. And talk to us about what you're thinking, man. Now you're either you have a chance of making Browns fans really happy or really upset. This is your chance.
I made them upset last time, right? I took the Ravens in a high-scoring affair, which it certainly wasn't. But I actually am going to take the Browns in this one. I think they win 24-17.
All right, fair enough. I mean, I can't be too upset about you merely based on our health. It's really going to be difficult for us. So
that's all it is based on. That's all it's based on.
Isn't favored towards us either.
The schedule, the chance to react, adjust, self-scout, and come back out and play the same team, but this time at home.
Is this a must-win, Brad, for the team?
Oh, no question. That's what I'm saying. It's kitchen sink game, trick plays, whatever you got in the bag, you're emptying it. You have to win this one or else you're done.
Wow.
Well, remind everyone where you can be found, what you're working on, and all that stuff.
You guys are fantastic. Thank you. I had so much fun with you guys.
Likewise.
I go on some of these shows and it's whatever, and you just kind of. But you guys have been great both times. I really enjoyed it. So thanks for having me on. So you can read my work at USA Today Sports Media Group's thebrownswire.com. It's at the Browns Wire on Twitter. And I host All Eyes on Cleveland at Blue Wire Podcasts, and that's just a show about the Browns, and just have a different guest on every week, and then I do a Saturday preview show with a guy named Jake Burns who covers the Browns also here in Cleveland, kind of a crossover show. So I do 2 to 3 shows a week, and I started a newsletter. So there's All Eyes on Cleveland newsletter you can subscribe to. So I'm doing lots of stuff here. So
busy man.
That's right. We appreciate you affording us the time. Have a great evening. Enjoy the game on Sunday, and we'll talk soon.
Should be quite interesting, fellas. So
absolutely.
We'll see.
Have a good one. Thanks.